I feel very corporate like this. Welcome to this meeting. I was not going to do a hand stitch on this. Hi, welcome back to my channel La Fraise. I'm Noémie and this week we are starting a series, oh yes, a whole series on shirt making. I'm not making one, I'm not making two, I'm not making three. I am making 4 shirts with you guys, so I hope you'll find this interesting and that testing all of those shirts will be helpful to you guys. So basically each month I will review a shirt pattern with you guys, and the series is a 5-episode series because at the end of making the 4 shirts I will do a summary comparison episode of the 4 shirts. This week I'm already wearing it right now. We are making the Archer shirt by Grainline Studio, so this one. Then next month we are making the Cameron shirt by Helen's Closet. The month afterwards we're making the Noah shirt by the Fabric Store, and the last month we are making the All-In shirt by Pattern Emporium. So a lot of shirt making in front of me, but hopefully that will be interesting. I will try to keep the review structured very standard between all of the videos, this way you can find the same information. So without further ado, let's get started. This shirt has been made in a very lightweight cotton. When I was looking at the fabric itself, it almost looked see-through. Now I find that on me, I don't find it see-through at all. You can't see my bra. I mean, I did choose kind of a nude colored bra, but still I am very pleased that it's not more see-through than it is. It's very lightweight. The next 2 shirts are going to be in stiffer cottons, and it was quite an unforgiving cotton every time you unpicked because the weave was so light, would leave marks, so you had to be quite careful with the unpicking. But generally very happy with the good weather arriving now. I feel like it's going to be super comfy, super cozy. So that is for the fabric. It was called a Japanese cotton, but I don't know if it's a protected label. I don't know if you can just write Japanese cotton and what it means. Is it actually from Japan or did they just write it? I have no clue. So it was called Japanese cotton. I don't really know what that means, but here we are. So I don't know if it's a bit early to give my thoughts on the fit of this shirt. I find that it's pretty boxy. I believe the 4 shirts I am trying for you are all dartless. By not having a fitted chest, it does look a bit like I just stole my boyfriend's shirt and threw it on type of look. So to be taken into consideration, because obviously it is going to look maybe a little bit more boxy in all of the different shirts. But this one here, I'm like, oh, is it too boxy? So something I at the same time like and don't like. I love that you don't have to unbutton the cuff to be able to slip the shirt on and off. Honestly, this is something that deters me from wearing some of my shirts. If I have to unbutton this and rebutton this every time I put it on and off, I just can't be bothered. It annoys me so much. So here you can definitely put your arm through without unbuttoning it, but it does mean that it's quite large. I have made the size that I was within the size chart. By the way, I will put where I am. So I am that yellow orangey line kind of like in the middle. So on the bust I was just a bit under a 12, and for the rest I was just a little bit over a 12. So I decided to do a 12, not to do any grading. I just went and like did the 12 straight. And yeah, I find it's very generous in the size. I literally just finished it, so it's a bit early for me to tell how I feel in it. Right now I feel like it's maybe a little bit too big and that I feel a bit swamped in it. I think if I wear it tucked in, it's going to make me feel more defined at the waist, and that maybe the boxiness is going to work better. Some of the other patterns we'll talk about, they kind of tell you, oh, you want more oversized, size up to 1 or 2 size. If you want more of a snug size down. Anyway, for every shirt I will do really my size, so you can see what the true size and the ease on the true size looks like. So you can see what it looks like and you can make your own judgment. I will go through all of my points. If I'm looking down here, it's because I have my notes. So let's start with, I have a note for you, and that is not for this shirt only, but it's get yourself a edge stitch foot. I didn't have one, and I kept thinking, oh, I'll get an edge stitch foot when I'm a grown up, and when I don't really know what I was waiting for, but I was always like, this is something I'll get one day, but not now, and I don't exactly know when. And I did the start of the shirt, so the button placket is all edge stitched. and I think I did a pretty good job with it, but obviously it's a lot more difficult without an edge stitch foot. By the way, an edge stitch foot is a foot that kind of has a little groove that you're gonna stick either in your seam line or against the edge of your fabric, and then that guides you so that your top stitching is super regular. You can move the guide so that it's more or less on the side and, you know, fits wherever you need it to fit. And then it's super easy to top stitch. So I've done all of the front top stitching myself, but then by the time I arrived at the collar stand, I was like, there is so much top stitching left to do, and I have 4 shirts to make. So I decided to get myself a top stitch foot. And honestly, if you are going to make shirts and you really want to give yourself the best chances of making something polished, just get yourself an edge stitch foot. That's going to be a really good start, and at least all of your top stitching is going to be super neat, and you're going to see in shirt making there's a lot of it. For the price of the pattern, so the pattern in PDF form, you can also get a paper version, but I'm just going to talk about PDF here, is $18 US, which at the time where I bought it was 18 euros and 10 cents. You get 2 views, 2 options with long sleeves, but one has kind of a gathered back and a much more full back. No short sleeves options, which to be honest, I don't really mind because it's so easy to hack yourself into do a little cuff here. So don't feel you really need the pattern to give you a short sleeve options. And it's nice that the 2 options are quite different. The one with a gathered back gives a much more romantic and feminine vibe. So 2 views with this pattern. So I did view A of the shirt, and with view A I have the standard collar with a stand, I have breast pockets, I have angled cuffs, which I find super cute, with super cute pleats at the cuff, and I have a curved hem and a center back pleat. That's kind of all of the features on this shirt here. And you get, so when you buy the pattern, first it's a layered PDF, which I really like, because if you tend to be confused by having all of the different sizes on your pattern, you can actually select only the size you want. So for example, I could have printed only a 12 if that was helpful to me, or maybe a 10, a 12 and a 14 if I needed to grade between those sizes, but you can print and see only the sizes you need, and I know that can be very helpful for some people. I personally always print everything because I'm thinking if I make it for someone else, I'm just happy to have it and not to have to reprint it. But that is because I am team trace, so I retrace my patterns with tracing paper. If you tend to just print your pattern and cut it straight, then you could use the layered pattern option and it would be very good for you. You get the instruction booklet, you get the print at home pattern, the US copy shop, the A0 copy shop, and a short 2-pager explaining you how to print the pattern. So this is everything you get when you buy the pattern. For the measurement system, the size chart is in metrics and imperial, so that's really great, but the instructions are only imperial, which is a little bit annoying. Most of the time it's fine because they are talking about seam allowances, and obviously you're doing it on your machine, which shows you what you do, so that's all right. But when you have to pre-fold something or measure something, if it's in inches and you are used to the metric system, it's kind of a pain. So I would have liked the whole pattern to be converted into metrics and not only the size chart. To be honest, I'm very happy the size chart is. That's the most annoying part to have not translated. I feel like you can make it work with the rest of the pattern not being translated. However, for me, if you were to have at the end of this 2 shirts that fit very similarly, I'm happy with the fit of both. Let's say the price is similar. If that is the only difference, then I am going to choose the one that has converted the imperial into metrics because it's just easier. So here I do have a small negative to mention, but nothing major. Size inclusivity. So the pattern, I don't know how people stand with that. I know that it is difficult for pattern companies, so I'm not starting a whole debate on this, but so you can either buy the pattern 0 to 18 or 14 to 32. So I would say it is size inclusive because it goes up to a 32, and so you can't buy it once and have the whole size chart. So that is a negative, I guess. But what I really like is that they have a good overlap between the two. My really huge pet peeve is when people have 0 to 12 and then 12 to whatever. It's like, what if you are you know, between like a 12 and a, like, it really bothers me if you don't have enough overlap between the smaller size and the bigger size. And here they have a whole 3 sizes overlap, which I think is great. So even though I prefer when you don't have 2 different size charts, I still like that the overlap is good. So for home use, it should be fine. One of the questions I had, thank you so much to, I think Marluce, you are the one who asked on the Discord, how much fabric did I ended up using? So most of the shirt patterns asked for around 2 meters of fabric. This one asked for 3. And I was like, wow, a whole extra meter compared to the other shirts. That's a bit surprising, but you know, why not? And also I was like, oh, it's 3. I think it was 3 no matter if your selvage was 1 meter 45 or 1 meter 15. In any case, I bought the 3 meters. This fabric was €3 something a meter, so it was very, very cheap. So I didn't mind having to buy the 3 meters. I was like, I will do what the pattern says to do. However, I did really not pay attention that the selvage was 1 meter 4, so very, very narrow. And I was like, 1 meter 4, now we are in trouble and probably it's not going to be enough, or God knows. Guys, 1 meter 4. So you have to imagine I bought 3 meters of fabric on a selvage of 1 meter 4, and I have 58 centimeters left. That is just short of a meter. That is basically a whole yard. I have all of this fabric left, and I have a much smaller selvage than what they tell you to do. And this is including that I messed up one of the things. So I had first used my thicker interfacing and I was like, oh, it'll be fine. And then feeling that interfacing on the softness of the shirt, I was like, what are you doing? So a friend from school was like, you should probably use a lighter interfacing. Yes, I should, because honestly this shirt, I mean, you can tell how drapey and light it is, and I would have had a cardboard of a collar and a cardboard of a button placket if I had used the original facing. So I had cut all of those pieces with the thicker facing. Then I thought, bad idea. Let's recut them with the thinner facing. So that's a whole meter left, knowing that I recut some of the pieces and that I did a bit of a boo-boo during the cutting. So obviously, this is not me saying buy only 2 meters and you'll be fine, because I don't want you to buy only 2 meters and then you can't make your shirt and then you hate me. I'm just saying that I absolutely didn't need the 3 meters that were required. With a much narrower selvage, I managed to cut everything fine. So maybe see how you're going to place your pieces first and then measure how much fabric you need. The pattern is ranked as an intermediate pattern, and I think that's quite an accurate ranking. It is a proper shirt. It's not cutting corners, it's not dumbing things down, it's not simplifying anything. So if you are making the Archer, you are starting a proper shirt pattern with all of the bells and whistles, and it is a lovely work and it is really cool to do, but you have to be ready that this is not your first sewing project, obviously. So I think intermediate is a good difficulty rating for it, and you know that you are going with the real deal. You are making a real grown-up shirt. You are not making a simplified version by any means. For the pattern instructions, I'm very happy with them. I thought it was easy to follow, it was clear, I was really happy with the instructions. I followed them to the letter. Kate, if you're watching this, I could hear you yell in my ear, to the letter. Yes, I followed the instructions to the letter. I will mention the only few places I have not followed the instructions, but I will make sure to mention them later on. The only moment where I was really confused by the instructions, and to be honest, it was starting to get pretty late, so I don't know if it was the instructions or if my brain was starting to shut off, but making the collar, I was so confused by what I was seeing, even though I had already used this method for constructing a collar, so it's not even like I was baffled by something new, but I was trying to look at it and I was so confused. But came to the rescue my next point, so save that. Just I wanted to say I found the collar a bit more difficult to get. A quick note about the collar actually, because I forgot to mention, but I actually really struggled on one of the sides, so that is separate from understanding what was happening. Once I understood, I did it, it's fine. I knew what I had to do and it was fine. I also recognized that it was a method I had already used successfully. I understand the mechanics of what's happening. And literally on the left-hand side, it kept going wrong and I could not at all understand what was happening wrong with the color. Every time I would turn it over, it didn't fit. So I unpicked it 3 times. Then I was like, I don't get it. Let's try the other side. Other side worked a charm the first time. So I was like, okay, so I do understand what's happening. Like I confirmed that I know how it works. I recheck everything that it should work. I try back the other side, retry twice, re-unpick twice. And in the end, what I did for that side is I didn't do the method that they recommend for the shirt. I just top stitched it. And I was like, that's it, we're going to call this good enough and done, because I really didn't manage to make it work the proper way on one of the sides for some reason. I will put a clip of what it looked like and maybe you know what happened, but like literally the fabric was matching, everything was supposed to work. So I really don't understand what was happening because yeah, it was supposed to work. Like, I don't understand that it worked super well on one side and not on the other. And I was really like, but there's no fabric. Like, I don't know what happened there. That's a mystery. So yeah, anyway, I still managed to make the shirt look nice, but I have to say I did have a bit of struggle with the front of the collar. Also, it's like such a visible place. It's not a place you want to have a boo-boo, but I did have trouble there and I unpicked so many times. I really wanted the shirt to look nice, but I think in the end, I think it's fine. The sleeve placket I also found a bit difficult, but then at the same time, I had done it at school and I couldn't really decipher if I understood what was happening because I have studied that sleeve placket in school and it was exactly the same technique. I kind of struggled to judge if a newbie would understand well what happened, but I think it wasn't too bad. And finally, the hem, I was hoping they would have a secret trick for how to make a very neat curved hem, but they didn't have a magic trick for you. Now, adding on to this, they had extra resources for how to make the shirt. And by extra resources, I mean they had a whole YouTube playlist. And honestly, I think that's amazing. If you are about to make your first shirt, you feel really taken by the hand with that playlist. Honestly, for me, when I sew, you have a video for each step. So each step you have a half an hour to 45-minute video. So it's extremely detailed, extremely detailed. So I didn't watch the whole thing. I was like, ooh, I have a life, you know, it's like I don't have time to watch everything. But I think if you are making your first shirt, you would feel so safe to have all of that information in video form there available for you. And personally, it meant that when I was, for example, stuck with the color, I could go in the playlist, find the one video on the color and watch that video specifically and felt help in the places I needed it. So I would really say that video playlist, a bit intense. It feels like you're going to watch, I think it's longer than if you watch the Lord of the Rings extended edition, the 3 movies, but you really get everything you need. Okay, so obviously after saying this, I couldn't sleep without thinking, is it really as long as the Lord of the Ring extended? And I have to say it's not. It's actually only 329 minutes, which is about 5 hours and a half of content. So it's only half the length of the Lord of the Ring extended, which is 11 hours altogether. Apologies, it's not quite the Lord of the Rings, but 5.5 hours, I think it's still a pretty decent amount of content. So sorry, I'll stop interrupting. I just felt like I just wanted to know that I have added up all the time of all the videos and why am I wasting my time doing this? But now at least it is cleared up and we can all sleep better knowing how long this playlist is compared to the Lord of the Rings extended. I was really happy with those videos. I know how hard it is to film yourself at the machine. I couldn't help thinking, my gosh, this person must have had the camera here and trying to film over the camera and not hide everything with her hands. So honestly, really good video series. So for the extra support available to help you with the shirt, I have to give them 5 stars, 10 out of 10, whatever the rating is, top mark, because that is really, really well done. So I watched the video on the collar, which really saved me for collar construction. And then also I watched the video on the hem, and I was hoping for a secret trick for that curved hem. They didn't have a secret trick, but they did share the trick of sewing a line at the seam allowance to serve as a guide to fold your first fold. This is something I knew, so it wasn't anything groundbreaking for me, but just so you know, that was not in the instructions, for example. So if you do want extra little tricks, they are in the videos, because that they mentioned in the video. It wasn't in the instructions, and in the video they also said if you had a serger, how you could serge the edge and then fold over the serge edge twice. So they do show more techniques in the video, more options, kind of small tips and tricks. Not the magical curved hem miracle I was hoping for, but still small stuff. So I'd say if there's any step where you think it's the first time I'm making this, I need a bit of support, go to that YouTube playlist. I will link it down below, by the way, but really, really good additional help. Okay, the places I veered off the instructions. I finished the edge of the pockets. So normally what they tell you to do is basically to fold over your fabric here, to top stitch, and that's your pocket done. Now it's like, isn't it going to fray inside of my pocket? I don't know if I'm being overly cautious, but in any case, I first zigzagged all of the edge and then turn it over and top stitch it. Telling you, I really followed everything to the letter, and I'm telling you the very small changes I did. So I did that. Me again, but it's actually worth mentioning because something I never, ever, 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 ever do, and it's the first time I've done it in my life, is even mark the button placements that they do. I was very committed to doing everything to the letter, and so I just want to say, normally what I do is I make my shirt, and once I have it on me, I choose where I want my buttons. I kind of keep the number of buttons they recommended, but then I choose the space I want between them and everything myself. And so I wanted to make sure that you would get the real experience and see how it really fits. So I even followed the button placement. I'm not saying I need an ovation in the comments, but just so you know, I really followed the instructions a lot more than usual. When I sewed the yoke, this seam line here, the one going across, they tell you to sew one and the back to base those together and then to add the third one. I was like, I'm putting the 3 together, sandwiching it and going, but that's obviously because I'm a bit more comfortable. I felt comfortable with the fabric I was using. I think if I was using a viscose for this or something a bit more slippery, I would have basted it, but so telling you everything, I didn't baste the yoke as we were meant to. And finally, I didn't do the slip stitches for the cuff. So the way you're supposed to sew the cuff is you sew this right side against right side, and then the inside you're supposed to do a slip stitch here. And to be honest, I am going to try to avoid any hand stitching I can avoid outside of school. So I was like, it's going to be top stitch, and that's all. That's how I've done my cuffs in the past, to be honest. Just the top stitching, and that holds everything together. So this is on the right side, and this is what it looks like on the other side. So I think it's fine. Honestly, I was not going to do a hand stitch on this. Okay, this note is quite specific to me, but if you have a similar machine to me, it might actually bother you as well, or make sense for you to pay attention to that as well. So actually, the seam allowance is a 1/2 inch. Often in American or Northern American patterns, I see more of a 5/8 seam allowance. So in European patterns, I think we tend to use 1 centimeter. In North American, 5/8 of an inch, and those two I'm fine with. The 1/2 inch, I find it such an annoying seam allowance because the line on my machine is all at the back, so I can't see it as easily. It's just harder for me to see and to sew on. It's fine, and don't tell me that you can use those little clippy things on post-it note to extend the line. Like, I know. I'm just telling you, again, if there was this pattern and one that fits the same, that's the same price of anything, the fact that it's 1/2 inch seam allowance, I'm like, that's more annoying than another option. If you have the inches at the front of your machine, obviously it's probably going to be less of a problem for you, but if you have a European machine, maybe look at how your machine's done, look at where the 1/2 inch seam allowance is, and if you know that it's going to bother you to put an extra seam guide or a post-it note, or to have to look at the back, just keep that in mind. I'm just saying, for me, it's one of the most annoying seam allowances, so I mention it. Don't come and yell at me in the comments for this, it's just my personal preference. I prefer other seam allowances than that one. I think it was really good because at the start they mentioned that the seam allowance is 1/2 inch, and then they say, oh, but in that place it's going to be 1/4 inch. And I'm always scared that they consider, oh, we've told you on page 1, by the time you're on page 14 and you arrive to that thing, you'd better remember. No, they do remind you that it is 1/4 inch in those places, so that I thought it was great that they don't assume you have remembered since the first page where they warned you, so that I think is great. Okay, that I'm not sure if I can complain about. I want to first see the other shirt sewing patterns I have to do, and then I can decide if I can talk about this or not. I find it a bit annoying when the left and right shirt pieces are different pattern pieces. It's just more tracing and more cutting, but I feel like maybe that's a thing in shirts. So this one I'm putting within brackets because maybe it's going to be like this with every shirt, and then I'm not going to complain. But if any of the patterns don't do that and manage to have left and right as one pattern piece and just have different markings on them, I'll like that. I found the burrito very weird, and I actually filmed it on the spot, so I'll let Noémie explain that. I've done the burrito method so many times, but every time I'm like, it doesn't feel right. So let's de-burrito this together and confirm that it works. It has to, right? Has to work. Has it worked? That's the front. That's the back. It has worked! Yay! Oh, magic. Okay. Whew. I totally understand the physics of the burrito, but actually I think it's because I have been following the instructions to the letter, and it's done it in the opposite way I've normally done it. So we've done the inner yoke first and then the outer yoke. And I'm much more used to doing it the other way. And so I was very, very confused, but it worked. Now we can press. That's a big relief now. It worked. Gathering the sleeve caps seems excessive. I am very curious if I hadn't gathered them at all, if I couldn't have eased it into the sleeve just the same, because I gathered, so I did the 2 lines of gathered like we meant to. Already, like, if it's just to fit in the sleeves and not to make gathered, 1 line would probably be enough. I gathered it and I'm like, oh, doing all of my gathered stitches. And then I tried to put it on. I'm like, oh, it's way too small. And I like re-pull and re-stretch all of my gathers. And then I was like, why did I even do those stitches? Like, I reopened it fully. So I would be curious, if you make it, do you even need to gather them? That really seemed like overkill. And you know, by that point, you've already sewn a lot and spent a lot of time being very patient. I was a bit like, why did they ask me to do that? But it's not necessary. Don't make me do extra stitch lines. And personally, my cuffs actually didn't fit for some reason. So when I sewed the cuffs on, so you're supposed to have 1/2 inch extra compared to the side of the sleeves, and that's normal, that's your seam allowance. But I had a lot more, like I had over 2.5 centimeters. So for some reasons, my cuffs were too big. To be honest, it was an extremely easy thing to fix because you just sew following the line of the shirt sleeves anyway. So that was the only pattern piece that didn't fit perfectly with the rest. So just a note that the cuffs didn't fit for me, but super easy to fix. The only annoying, but really it was so easy to fix, I'm just mentioning it to be super complete, but so it meant that the buttonhole marking, because I had to cut so much of the cuff, the buttonhole marking was in the part I ended up having to cut, so I had to remark the buttonhole myself, but not difficult, not a problem. I'm just saying that's the only thing where the pattern had a little something that didn't work. By the way, can we enjoy those pleats? I love the pleats that are next to the button. I think that's super cute. Very nice detail. I really like that. So that's all I can think of to talk about this shirt. I hope this was a helpful video. I haven't filmed the next shirt yet. So if when you see this video you think, oh, but I really wanted to know X or Y or something else, please let me know, because obviously I want to make this video as helpful for you as possible. So if there's anything else you would like to hear in the pattern review, let me know. And so next time we are seeing the Cameron shirt by Helen's Closet. I would like to thank Nina for tipping me a coffee. Thank you so much, Nina. This is extremely appreciated. I hope you find this video interesting as well. If this was helpful to you, don't hesitate to give me a big thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. And if you want to see the future shirts I'm making as part of this series, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget that you can make anything, including shirts, except that it is a little bit more of an intermediate project. So obviously if it's your very first project, you can't make it right now, but you can definitely make it one day, build up to it. So you can make anything, but make sure you have built up a bit of skill beforehand. Otherwise it's going to be a very painful experience. Oh, Noémie, try to make the end of your video a bit more snappy. You can make anything. I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Should I open one more button? I don't know, it feels very... Is it too sexy like this? Opening one more button? Don't know. Already, button placement.